About to get started on our next Depot Biz Chats. 5 key principles in making business investments. And I have my friend. Can I call you friend now?
Yes, sir.
Cool. We had coffee together, so I think that's enough.
It's official.
Yeah. This is John, and as you can see here, he is with Pinnacle Storage Properties. And what we're going to do is talk about, well, again, I'll say it again, the 5 key principles in making business investments. Now, I want to make very clear that this isn't advice that you actually can take to heart and expect to do it, and then boom, you have a great investment. These are tips that we get from experience. Nothing's black and white in life, and that's how advice is. So I just want to make that clear that these are great ideas for you to work with and to build on, but don't think this is the make or break of an investment. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's not legal advice either.
Right.
It's really a guideline, an outline. When it comes to actual investing, seek somebody that's way more experienced than me.
Right. Right. But for me, and for most of us, I imagine that you are more experienced than myself. I think you're being a little humble, which is not in character, right, Christina? No. Yeah, but no, I told him to behave today, but John's awesome, and I'm really excited to have him here, so I'm going to have him introduce himself before we get started.
John Manus, Pinnacle Storage Properties out of Katy, Texas. We have 11 self-storage properties around Texas, soon to be 12, working on a development deal here in North Houston, which will be 13. That's all my contact information. Before we get started, I want to say one thing. I want to say hi to my mom. She's watching. She thinks I'm famous today because I'm on Facebook Live. So in the bottom section of this, if everybody can say hi to Ozell, it's Ozell. That's how you spell it. So she'll get a kick out of that. So
that's you just got so many points for doing that.
Absolutely,
by the way.
I did.
Lucky. That's a good call. Good call. I should have done that my first. I think I made that joke. My dad was calling me out on my posture and the way I was talking.
Sit up.
Sit up straight. Stop saying Is
this better, Mom? Is that good?
There we do have people saying hi, Ozell.
We
do have people
awesome.
saying it.
Thank you, everybody.
So we are in the Office Depot flagship store in Austin. And I keep looking at this. The camera's over there. So if you heard that ringing, it's just because someone walked through the
security just tackled them on the way out the second time.
No.
So we're good.
But yeah, we are in the new Office Depot store. Have you been to this location since it's remodeled?
I have.
You have?
This is awesome. You guys really did a good job.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
It really looks good.
I actually work here half the time. Yeah. So it's not like an actual co-working space, right? But it is treated as such. All our furniture here at the front in the display area is for you to work at. I mean, if I could turn the camera, you could see a few people at desks right there. Yeah, right there.
If you're in Austin, come check it out. They've really done a good job of laying the whole front of this Office Depot out as co-working space.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and that's the goal, is that we're trying to build a community. We're trying to be part of this small business community.
You can feel it.
And hence why we're doing these Depot Biz Chats and why we're getting started right now. Okay, so John, there are 5 key principles. I would love to kind of go over the 5 in bullet points, and then we can kind of dive into each one.
Awesome.
From our last talk, I don't want to steal your thunder. I don't want to read everything. Okay.
Do it.
All right, so you mentioned 5 key principles include knowledge, networking, leverage, solid asset, and cash flow is king. Do we want to just dive into number 1, or do you want to kind of go over the whole thing first?
I think what you and I talked about was, if you're trying to start a business, one of the things about Office Depot is they cater to that small business like us. Mm-hmm. And the conversation that happened between the two of us evolved around, how do you start a small business, make sure that it's financially secure, and I think the goal for everybody is to make money, right?
Right.
So when we were talking, I said, these are probably 5 things that really added to creating value, not only for your customer, your end user, but business to business, as well as your investor. And how have we as a company made money?
Right.
And that's where this conversation came in.
And sorry to interrupt, but one of the first things that I wanted to talk about when we were having that coffee talk is people invest, I mean, I'm using the word invest, right? But it's so scary to use a big chunk of your own money. And so you want to know that you're making the right investment. You feel good about it, at the very least. Yep. So that was something, especially when you're a new small business owner, that money is probably really important to you because that's your seed money. That's everything to you for your business. So you want to make sure you're divvying it up correctly and in a responsible way.
And if you listen to the statistics, the statistics say the odds are against you,
right,
if you're going to start a business. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to add some value of how we've been able to be successful in not only creating a solid business model, but extend that out and how we've been able to make money.
Right.
So
cool. All right. And actually, can you explain some of your experience in this field?
In the self-storage field?
Yeah.
So I've been in storage. This is my 14th year. I started as a district manager with the 4th largest self-storage company in the United States. It was called Uncle Bob's at the time. It's now Life Storage. Got promoted to regional vice president, left there to be the COO of the Jenkins organization, which had 55 self-storage properties. And then about 2.5 years ago, myself, Robbie Dunn, and Eric Osterhaus started a company called Pinnacle Storage Properties in Houston. So collectively, we've got about 25 years worth of self-storage experience.
Wow, that's a lot of experience.
Which is a great segue into the number one thing that's on this list.
What would that be?
Knowledge.
Knowledge. All right.
So when it comes to knowledge, if you're out there starting a business somehow and you don't have the knowledge in that space, but you have a concept that says, I think we could make some money in this category, but I don't know a lot about that category, go find an expert in that category and partner with them.
Right.
And then create the business together. And that's what me, Robbie, and Eric did, is we all have our own specialty. I'm the face of the company. As you can see, it's not a pretty face, but it's the face. So I do a lot of this, a lot of the investor networking, friends and family, face-to-face conversations. And then I run operations after we buy the property with a really, really solid team. From there, Robbie Dunn does all the banking relationships, all the legal relationships, post-investor communication, all the documentation, things like that. And then Eric Osterhaus does all of the construction-related stuff. He deals with the GCs, he deals with the architects, the engineers, the city, which can be complicated at times, all the permitting, things like that. So we each have our own specialty, and we talk internally a lot about control versus influence, and we each control certain things and influence each other within the organization.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna go out and start some type of company, start with the knowledge piece of it, and if you don't know, partner with somebody that knows.
Right.
Give away a small piece of your business in order to have a great partner.
Right. So to simplify, basically you're saying that small sacrifice up front to basically share part of your business could be exponentially more for you if you have that expert who's bought into your business now, and it's part of their business. So
correct.
That means, I love that, and it's why we do the business service deep go biz chat stuff. Is we always try and emphasize, do not try and do absolutely everything in your business. My dad did that, and a lot of our parents, I think, did that. And I think that's something that we have learned, as a result, is no, you can't work 23 hours a day. Like
you can.
It
just doesn't last long.
Right. It's not gonna work very long, at least. Maybe Elon Musk is the only one who lets, but even he's cracking under social media. Whatever. I'll leave it at that.
So we will not do in this broadcast what he did in his last broadcast.
Oh,
never mind.
Oh, okay, good.
Those in the audience probably know.
I'm gonna Google that one later.
So I want to go back to something you said. You said I want to paraphrase that in the click phrases that you hear all the time, and that is work on your business, not in your business. And, we all have tasks to do inside of our business. But if you partner with the right people, you don't have to be the expert in every category that exists within your business.
Right.
Even as a small business, you can be the owner, operator, the sole person, only technically one employee, but have 10 different subcontractors
Right.
that technically work for you, that makes you a 11-person company.
Right. Exactly.
So and you partner with them and you share in some of those profits and you sub it out and you skim some money off the top, and that's how you become wealthy.
Right. And then not to push it, but there are plenty of services too that have specific expertises, social media services. I'm pointing at Christina because that's kind of how I met you, was through Christina. And
correct.
The camera won't turn automatically. I don't have a button for it. She won't let me do it anyway. So she'll be on in October though. So don't miss that one.
Yep.
But yeah, I just love that connection. I met you through her, and you essentially initially hired. We'll go through it deeper when she's on. But you hired her for a specific expertise. I met her. Now we're all three working together.
That's
like,
correct.
That is a beautiful thing about small business.
And that's the second bullet point on here, is it says your network, right?
Right.
But, we'll dig into that pretty deep here in a second. But the knowledge portal, I want to emphasize that from a knowledge standpoint, you don't have to be the sole expert in everything you do. That's why they make lawyers. That's why they make CPAs. That's why they make people that know way more about investing than we do. That's why they make people that know how to program an Excel worksheet so that you can underwrite to see if your pro forma looks good or not. All of these people are way smarter than me, but what we do is we give a piece of that away to everybody.
Right.
And so you don't have to be the expert in everything.
Right. But you need to find an expert.
You have to.
Right.
Yeah, and partner with them.
Right. Exactly.
So,
And can you
yeah.
emphasize on that? I mean, you mentioned partnering them specifically. I know a lot of people who don't want to give up their piece of pie or their whole pie. So, how would you tell somebody?
stop being greedy.
Okay.
Is how I tell them. So,
Okay.
I mean, there's two things that drive the market up or down, and that's greed and fear. And the two things that people have when they're looking at partnering with somebody is, I want to keep it all for myself. That's one. Or two, I fear that you're not going to be a good partner.
Right.
All right, so that's why you write a contract and you sign a partnership agreement, and all of those legal documentations protect you and I. Not just about protecting me, it's also about protecting you at the same time. All in those documentations.
Gotcha.
So taking the approach of cautiously optimistic is probably a good way of doing it.
Okay.
And that's how Robbie, Eric, and I started. We had a partnership agreement that in our partnership agreement included people in mind. It included a guy that we created a construction company with, Christina Alvino that we created a marketing company with, Eric Osterhaus is one of our partners now, that we were going to do development deals together. And eventually we kept altering that partnership agreement because it only made sense to share in the pie. So Robbie and I started 3 years ago through networking, knowing each other on a quarterly basis. We'd have lunch over the last 5 or 6 years. We started this, created a partnership agreement to be cautiously optimistic. We had a goal that in 5 years we would have $100 million worth of assets. We're 2.5 years in, and we're almost there right now.
Very nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. But the reason is because we have people that we work with, like Eric, like Dave, like Christina, like Cassie, like Maury, all of these people, Ross. We work with all these people and we give away a piece of the pie. And that has exploded us because we have such a great team. Some of them are, quote, employees that we still give a piece of the pie to. And then some of them are external people that we still give a piece of the pie to.
Right.
So we've learned that not by being greedy, by being cautiously optimistic, and not having that fear that, everybody's out to steal from you, we've been able to explode this thing in a 2.5 year time frame.
2.5 years. So you're basically doing this twice as fast as you expected.
That is correct.
Right. Very cool. So that was that was more. We talked about knowledge. That was a bit of networking too. Would you say we should move on to the next one?
I want to highlight some networking stuff. So one of the things we've done a really good job of is this. Okay, so I have this mentality through the law of attraction that you are what you associate with, and what you focus on expands, right? So we spend a lot of time focusing on not knowing what's going to come out of a relationship like this.
Right.
Okay, so you and I have talked 3 or 4 times over the last 2 or 3 months, and the relationship just keeps getting stronger and stronger and stronger. I talk to different people and they're like, hey, how did you get involved in that? And you said it a minute ago, through Christina. Christina met you at a networking event.
Right.
Here we are here, and now I've got 3 other people that are like, hey, how can I get involved in that Office Depot thing?
Oh, we'll give you their contact. Yeah, we'll give them their contact.
So, and there is how it grows, right?
Right.
But outside of that, I speak a lot on the state level when it comes to self-storage. I speak a lot on the national level when it comes to self-storage. I speak a lot at investor conferences on things like self-directed IRA and 401k type of conferences.
So you guys were at a trade show recently, right?
We were. We went to the Quest IRA out of Dallas for the self-directed, and then we were at the National Self-Storage Association conference last week in Vegas.
Wow. Yeah, so networking, traveling to all these places is part of your business plan, right? It's not a side note, it's not an afterthought, it's part of your plan, right?
That is correct. So I'm also trying to understand what my audience is here today. So let's say that you're in a local area and you don't have a budget for that type of travel. So here's what we did. We started a meetup group for self-storage in Houston. From there, Robbie Dunn moved to Dallas about a year ago. We started one in Dallas. We conduct a meetup at both of those places. Every time we buy a self-storage property, we have a meetup group at that self-storage property. Show everybody what we're gonna do.
Right.
And then 3 months later, we have another meetup group at that and show them what we did. And then a year later, we pull everybody back to that same location and show them the results of what we did a year later. And so we've actually become the driving force in Houston and Dallas when it comes to self-storage. We didn't wait around or just go to a networking event. We created it ourselves.
You created your own community essentially, right? Well, you filled a void in a community.
That is correct.
Yeah.
And each of those groups have about 350 members to them. So right there you have 700 different people that the network then explodes to that next ring, and so on and so on.
Right.
So don't just wait around. If you're in a small little community, whether it's Tyler, Texas, or Dallas, Fort Worth, get involved. Put yourself out there. Be vulnerable. Start to talk to people. Start a handwritten database if that's what it takes. But start.
Right.
And so we've been able to explode that network over 2.5 years just by doing silly stuff like this.
Right. And let me emphasize. I told you I was going to knock that over.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Let me emphasize this, is that it's also kind of fun, right? And that's important for me.
It's fun if you're an extrovert. If you're an introvert, it's not too fun.
Fair enough.
Because they go, oh my God, my head's going to explode.
Fair enough. You're right. You're right about that.
So if you're an introvert out there, pick an extroverted partner that goes out and does this.
See, it's not just business skills.
No.
It's everything.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
So, but now watch how this works, because we're having this conversation. We've got X amount of people on this chat. If you go to pinnaclestorageproperties.com, go under Why Self-Storage, learn more, and fill that out, you'll be on our distribution list. And now my network just exploded more. Please don't crash my website. But you can go there, and this is how it goes. And so when you get involved and you start to talk and you keep exploding that network, it just grows and grows and grows.
Right, and that's a great segue into leverage, right? Because you're networking. Yeah, all right.
This is one of my favorite parts because leverage is so abstract. So knowledge is a task-oriented type of thing. You either go find the person with knowledge or you go learn it yourself, right?
Right.
Networking, you've got to go do, or someone has to go do. But leverage can be more abstract. So like on a regular basis, we leverage our signature. So we leverage our signature to sign on debt that allows us to buy more properties, which creates us more passive income and or lump sums of income. And then we put that money in an account which allows the bank to lend us more money or leverage more money,
Right.
and so on and so on. Because if you don't have any money in the bank ain't gonna lend you money, right?
Ironically, yeah.
Ironically.
Yeah.
But a lot of people think of leverage in the form of signing on debt. I'll take it a step further. I'm leveraging this relationship right now to grow my network,
Right.
Which in turn, I've leveraged that relationship with Christina to meet you to be here.
Right.
So continue to leverage that. But I'll give some advice in there, is you also have to give back. You can't always be taking that leverage. You've got to let people leverage you.
Right.
Like you're doing right now. You're leveraging me to help people
With some of your knowledge, you know?
to know how to grow a small business, right?
Exactly.
So it has to be a win-win. It can't be a win-lose.
Right. It's got to be a two-way street.
It has to be.
Right.
So leverage can be more abstract. It can be leveraged through relationships, leveraged through money, leveraged through knowledge, all of the things that we've already talked about. You can leverage them, but you have to be willing to let people leverage you at the same time.
Right.
Don't be greedy.
Don't be. I think that might be the theme here today, right?
Could be.
I mean, we'll try and think of a softer way to say it.
No, say it that way.
Okay.
Because sometimes you need to be punched in the face, right?
True. It's like you're being greedy. Just relax.
I mean, give something away. It's okay.
Right.
So if you make a mistake and you give too much away, next time don't give so much away.
Right. You learned your lesson.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So that's leverage. We went through knowledge, we went through network, and we went to leverage, which basically you're leveraging your network, you're leveraging your knowledge, you're leveraging whatever you got, basically.
So here's the other thing on signature, leveraging signature. On one of our first deals, based on our net worth and the cash we had in the bank, etc., we leveraged our relationship and we had a high net worth person sign on the debt with us
Okay.
so that we could borrow more money at first.
Uh-huh.
So it's leveraging the relationship, but it's also leveraging their signature.
Yeah, literally their signature.
Literally their signature, and we gave a big piece of our pie away to get that signature.
Uh-huh. And it's worked out.
Well, that was the springboard to where we're at right
Exactly. So okay. Again, these are not legal advice. This
That's
is
correct.
just what you've learned from your experience.
now. This is a buddy of mine that I've been friends with for 14 years.
Okay, so let's
I didn't
add
just
that
go
to-
randomly find,
Right.
hey, you're a millionaire, come here, sign on this.
Right.
It's friends and family. It's somebody I've known for a
It's
really
somebody
long time.
you've probably talked to this specific thing a lot about, or
This person's been pushing me to go out on my
okay.
own for the last
There
14
you go.
years.
That helps. Yeah. Awesome. So this one I thought was actually the last step is my favorite. I don't know why that line right there. I'm not going to give it away yet, so you have to stick around to hear the last line. But we'll go over finding a solid asset, how that's a key principle, and then we'll go into my favorite part.
Sure. So finding a good asset, I'll highlight storage in this conversation, but I'll also use other assets. I'm a believer in buying a physical asset versus just a concept, but that's me personally. Okay, so I'll differentiate that. I'm more into buying a house or buying a building or buying a self-storage property or something to that nature than I am in creating an app or starting a service type of business, etc. That's just me. Again, not legal advice,
Right.
but I like to have a physical asset when it's all said and done versus just a stock or versus just a concept.
Gotcha.
Okay, so for me, I'm going to talk about physical assets compared to those other concepts because that's what I know best. So in a market like 2008, 2009, being in the storage industry for 14 years now, I've seen a couple different cycles, good and bad.
Right.
During the 2008, 2009, when the market took a big hit, 40 to 50% drop, right?
Right.
self-storage publicly traded companies took that same hit because of how they evaluate that market share of what that asset is worth based on interest rates, based on the capital markets, all that kind of stuff. But in reality, those particular companies, one of them, which I was at the time, only had a 2.5% decrease in cash flow the year before. But because of evaluation reasons on Wall Street, their stock dropped from $50 to $18, even though they only had a 2.5% decrease in cash flow from the year before.
Wow.
Which didn't even go back to the year before that. So based on those factors, that's why I like physical assets, because typically in physical assets, you have a cash flow that's associated with them.
Right.
So in storage, there's 55,000 self-storage properties in the United States. Only 12% of them are publicly traded. There's another 17% that's traded by big money, or what I'll call private REITs. That leaves about 70% of the population that's owned by one-off owners.
So like what? Like someone who owns one piece of property. Okay.
So, and there's other factors in there of that 70%. There's companies like us that own 11 in that 70%. But what ends up happening is there's still a lot of room for consolidation in there in order to find an asset. On top of that, it's not that it's recession proof, but it's recession resistance. Over the last 35 years of storage history, because it's a rather young environment as an asset class, there's only been 1 year that didn't make the year before, and that was 08 to 09.
That's crazy. In 35 years?
In 35 years, okay? So from an asset class, that's why we love this asset class. We then also in turn gain the knowledge to be respectable, or somewhat respectable for my friends that are watching this, respectable in the industry to know what we're doing when it comes to that asset class.
Right.
So it allows for that continual consolidation in storage that allows companies like ourselves, what I call the middle traders. We're not the REITs, we're not the big guys, but we're not the one-off owners at the bottom. We're somewhere in the middle. It allows for us to gather up a bunch of these assets and not only gain money to pay our bills, but it allows us to gain financial wealth over a longer period of time.
Right, which you then in turn can invest into more properties and continue to grow that.
It's called compounding, right?
Right, exactly.
So we continue to compound. So as we grow the asset value, we can either refinance that asset or sell that asset, take that money and do it again. Because there's 55,000 of these things.
Right.
So
this might be a curveball. It might not be. Sorry. I'm just going to ask.
Good.
So you said, this was for specifically properties, storage properties in particular. Now, if this was a service-based business, you could still find solid assets in that, right? I mean, like, let's say you still had a brick and mortar. Would you recommend owning that building or leasing? You know what I mean?
That's a great question, because I have this conversation with Christina Alvino all the time. And what this conversation is, she owns a service company. She is a marketing company that caters to the small and mid-size operators in self-storage, because these operators don't have enough money to hire a full-time internal marketing person.
Right.
So she's able to sub out to those people. So it's a service company. So if it were me, again, not financial advice, but if it were me and I was creating a service company, I would create that service company, ensure that it cash flows enough. I would buy an asset that allows me to have an office, but I would buy that asset under a different LLC, and I would pay rent from my service company to that asset.
Okay.
So this is where you got to talk to people that are smarter than me, like CPAs and lawyers and so on, but I believe somewhere in there, there's a tax write-off, and you're getting an asset that then now pays for the mortgage on this asset through the service company that you own here, which allows this asset to gain value as you pay down the mortgage,
Right.
which creates a gap. That gap's called wealth. right?
Right.
So over time, instead of paying rent to someone, you own this asset. So currently right now through her company, she's looking for a smaller self-storage property in Austin, Texas that she can buy with us as partners because we're the expert, rehab it, but office out of it.
Okay.
So that she pays rent to that through her Fine View marketing company. And now it grows this asset and grows wealth for a number of people,
Right.
not just herself. So not a curveball.
No.
I talk about this all the time, is in order to grow wealth, have an asset. Because eventually you got to pay the mortgage down, right?
Right.
I'd like to hope that even if that value is the same of that asset and or even goes down a little bit, that hopefully you can create a gap by paying that mortgage down. That's kind of like a savings account, so to
Right.
speak. But let's say hypothetically that it raises in value. Well, now you gain net worth, which allows you to buy more assets and sign on more notes and make money passively
Right.
or in lump sum that then allows you to buy more assets and so on.
And here we go again.
Continual
Right.
compounding.
I love it.
Yep.
Very cool. And I think that's a very important aspect, to make, because, I'm sorry, aspect, that's not the right word. Point to make is that I feel like most of my friends who have their own businesses are very services oriented. So I love that you can still use solid assets to grow your equity. Is that the right word?
That's a good word.
Okay, to grow your equity, even if you're just doing a services-based business.
But what happens a lot of time is that service-based business sits there and goes, man, I ain't got the money to buy a building.
Right.
But I'm going to pay rent. I'll make up numbers. I'm going to pay $1,000 a month to this guy to rent his space. But if you go buy an asset, again, making this up, $500,000 asset, you take in an additional partner that gives you the 30% down, you sign on the note, and you pay that $1,000 to this, you at least know you got $1,000 worth of income against the $500,000 asset, right?
Right.
At least. And then you rent out the rest of it, and you become, or taking a partner that knows how to do all of that, and manages that whole process, of which you use your money to gain wealth over time,
Right.
instead of giving it to somebody else.
That makes great
Because
sense.
if you have friends that have service environment that have a fear of buying that asset, have them call me.
Okay.
I'll go buy the asset without them, and they can pay me the rent.
Only if I get a little split of that.
Hey, now that's what I'm talking about right there. See? At least you know I'm willing to help.
Right, exactly. As long as I can get a little something. No, I'm just kidding. Cool. So the last step. All right, let me go through the first four: knowledge, network, leverage, finding a solid asset for your business, and then my favorite is cash flow is king. But my favorite line that we agreed on was, don't buy yourself a job.
That's correct.
And I think that's just such a resonating sentence. Do you mind going into that a little bit?
Sure. So I'll use storage, I'll use single family homes as an example. A lot of times how people get into investing is they say, well, I live in a house or I live in an apartment, so I know what it takes to run a house or run an apartment, right? Because I live here. So
Right.
there's a familiarity with that. So they say, if I'm going to invest, I'm going to go buy a house. So what they do, and I've done this, Robbie's done this, Eric's done this, we would never go back to doing this. And that is, when I was 23 years old, and I'm old now, I bought my first piece of real estate. And then I started buying real estate after that, over about 4 or 5 year time frame. I bought 4 or 5 single family and small multifamily assets. Okay. And what I figured out is that I bought myself a job. And the reason is, you buy a single family home because you have $10,000 that you can put down on the asset, you can finance it, X amount of leverage, and you rent it out to somebody because that's what you know. And you may know how to fix toilets, you may know how to fix garbage disposals and all that kind of stuff. Well, what ends up happening is at 3 o'clock in the morning, guess who they call? They call you, right? To come fix their toilet, or their HVAC breaks over the weekend, or whatever the case is. That's where I say, don't buy yourself a job. If you buy enough single family homes to where it generates enough money to hire a full-time person to manage them for you, or hire a management company to do that, then you're taking one step away from having a job, and now it's become what I would call an investment instead.
Right.
The problem with that is hiring the right person. Let's go back to knowledge, network, right?
Right.
So you have to make sure they're the right person that you're hiring, and now you manage one person instead of managing 10 different single family tenants.
Right.
You have to scale big enough to be able to afford to pay for someone else. So that's where I say cash flow is king. If you can scale enough to have enough cash flow, you can then manage the people that then manages the asset, because you have enough cash flow to where you're not buying yourself a job.
Right.
So I use single family as that example. I'll go on to storage. In storage, it's typically an asset that does $20,000 more per month that you can afford a full-time person to run the store. Anything under that, you're typically buying yourself a job. Not always. You could afford to hire a part-timer and put a kiosk in and stuff like that, but that's a totally different business model and a different conversation.
Gotcha.
But in our environment, if you buy a 50-space self-storage property, it doesn't generate enough cash on a monthly basis to pay somebody to man that store. So guess who goes rents the space? You do.
Right.
Right? Or I do, whoever owns the asset. Well, in this particular case, if you can buy or build a large enough asset that allows for enough cash flow, or it's structured in a way that allows for enough cash flow, then you can hire somebody else to do it. And now you're managing those people.
Right.
In our case, we have district managers, area managers, operations coordinator, full-time financial analyst. All of these guys, we generate management fees from each asset that go into a management company, and we pay for these people to be able to go manage those people at those stores.
Right. To do the job that you didn't try and buy in the first place.
I mean, and Cassie and Maureen and Rob and these guys will attest to this. You don't want me at the store renting that space. I'm gonna screw that paperwork up. I'm gonna do, but they've become the expert in that, right?
Right.
So there goes back to the knowledge piece. I don't have to be the knowledge person.
Right.
I can hire somebody that has that knowledge, put them in place,
And you
and
play-
they become the.
Right. And then you're playing your strength by being here with me,
That's correct.
rather than, saying, how can I help you, to somebody who comes up into your office or your building. That makes sense.
So I'm not filling it out, the paperwork at store level. I'm not screwing it up at store level. And then I am able to utilize my resources in a different way. So by generating a good level of cash flow, it then allows you to hire these people. All right, so let's say that you're starting a business and you don't have cash flow, right? The people are sitting in the office going, John, you're crazy. I don't have cash flow. Okay, that's easy. So I'll use graphic design as an example through the marketing company that Christina owns. Is you then go out, do what I'm doing here, you become the salesperson of your company, you land that $5,000 contract to do all the graphic design work for a company over 60-day time frame. And if you don't have the skill set to do the graphic design, you find a subcontractor that does, and you take that person and you split it with them. So now you give them $2,500 to do all of that graphic design. They give you 3 or 4 different examples. You pass that on to your client. They say yes to one of them. They make a couple tweaks. You finalize it. You collect a $5,000 check. You pass $2,500 of it on to that person, and now cash flow is king, right?
Right. Yeah.
And that's how you start a small business. But then it allows you to go out and say, I have a full staff. I have a graphic designer. I have a content writer. I have a programmer. And what's it cost you on a full-time basis? Nothing. And for my brother Joe, there you go, Joe. Nothing. So.
Wow. See, and I remember us talking about that, hitting that point, and being like, never thought about it like that. Sure. I always thought, if I'm starting a business, I better be ready to lose money first. Always. Like that's just, and I think for the most part, you're gonna at the beginning, you may or may not invest too much, too little, whatever. But my issue is I always thought there was no other way. I always thought, no, you're gonna be dropping 10, 15, 20, 30, whatever the amount is, and you're just basically taking a 50-50 flip of the coin. you know, but you're kind of helping explain, you know, there are certain steps you can take, certain mentalities you can take with you in these conversations about investing in property and stuff like that, where I think I could feel a lot more comfortable parting with a big chunk of money.
Or even if you don't have money and you're sitting there saying, well, I don't have a big chunk of money to risk. What you're risking is your time, right?
Right. Yes.
So you're sitting here saying, well, I don't have the money, but somebody does. And if I'm a flow through type of company where I've got a service and I'm providing that service, the only thing I'm then doing is taking the risk of my time. I'm not taking the risk of my money because it's a pass through. So I could do all of those designs through this graphic designer, send it to the end customer. They don't like any of it, so I never get paid. I've not wasted any money, right?
Right, that's true.
But I've wasted a month worth of my time.
Right.
So in theory, time is money, so you've wasted the time piece of it. But I think if you throw enough stuff at the wall as a small business owner, you're gonna have some wins, and you might have some losses along the way. I mean, through the years, the last 30 years, I've created a couple companies that have made money and lost money. But you gotta take a chance, right?
Right, and then I mean, my parents said it all the time. I'm sure your parents say it all the time. You learn from your mistakes. That's the whole point, is that you make that mistake, you know why it was a mistake, and you avoid it next time. Or you fix it, you know.
But just like this, if you leverage your network and leverage their knowledge and so on, you could avoid some of those mistakes.
Right.
I've read some books in the past that said, you know, create yourself a board of directors, right? And it's a bunch of people that you go to for different topics in your life. Okay, they don't know that they're on your board of directors, but you go to them and bounce ideas off of them. Luckily, we've created that internally to where we go to different people and bounce ideas, but there's other people outside of our own company that we utilize as that board of directors to say, all right, you've done this in the past, what worked, what didn't work, and so on.
Right.
So leverage that knowledge and say, and when they say, this really didn't work, listen to them.
Right.
Don't go, you know what, I think I can do it better. Say, okay, what lesson can I learn out of
Right,
that?
exactly, yeah. And that's why communities are becoming more popular these days, because communities are now sharing this knowledge. What we're doing at
Right
Depot
here,
Biz
right
Chats
now. Yep.
with our Workonomy Facebook group, that's where you can go to actually ask some questions, and we'll find speakers who will actually talk about that stuff. We have John here because somebody did mention something about investments about a month or two ago. So that is part of the wheel of content that we're trying to create, is we want you to be in this community, just like you're saying. We want to ask you what are your biggest pain points, or what are some gaps, right? Maybe you're happy with your company or your business, or you're happy with where you are, but there are always gaps. There's always something that you can fix. Maybe there's an extra 2 hours that you would want per day. Maybe you sleep 5 hours a night and you would rather sleep 7. Find a service that could help you save some time so you don't have to do it, right? That's why we're doing this. That's why I am so grateful that you came here. And we'll have Christina here next month. Actually, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about Christina too, considering you guys know each other. I met you through her, and you guys do work together. So, talk about your relationship with Christina.
So what she does for us is she acts as our internal director of marketing. Particularly in storage as well as other industries, when you say marketing, most people nowadays go directly to website, SEO,
right,
pay-per-click, all of that. And I always like to say that marketing is so much more than that, particularly in the storage industry, where we're kind of behind the times. We're a little bit archaic when it comes to technology and how that technology impacts the self-storage industry. Like in most cases, you can walk into a store and see nice, pretty TVs like this that's behind us, but you don't see them where they're on 6 different TVs. Every TV has its own TV.
Gotcha.
We've not graduated to that yet. That type of technology is an opportunity for the storage industry. So FindView Marketing brings that to the table. She has graphic designers that report to her. She has SEO, content writers, programmers that know how to program to make your website read different things, that interacts with the software at store level. She knows how to work with Bluehost and GoDaddy and all of those different companies, how to set up email addresses. All of that is marketing.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
So she knows how to do email blasts. All of the stuff that I have no flipping clue how to do and don't want to be the expert
Right.
of it. So she acts as that internal for us, but there's also a niche in our industry that, let's say that director of marketing for a company is a $100,000 a year job type of person, because that's pretty much what it is. If you own 2 self-storage properties that do $30,000 a month, you can't afford the payroll of a $100,000 a year person.
Right.
But you can afford the payroll of $500 or $1,000 credited to your P&L through an expense to subcontract out to do a lot of these little things. Well, in a company like that, it allows for you to do all these little things for a company for a self-storage provider that has an impact from that business to the actual customer that rents the space. So she acts as a director of marketing for us, and that's how our team views her. So if there's something that we have an opportunity with on local grassroots marketing, she creates the flyers for it. She creates the content. She does the Facebook email blast, all of that kind of stuff, because my team is not the expert in that.
Right.
She is.
Gotcha.
So, and I'm guessing that's what she's going to talk about next month on this thing?
Probably.
Yeah, so it allows for us to hire that out, but treat it as it's an internal resource.
Right.
Just like I've been talking about how to do if you're creating a company here.
Absolutely. So that was a mouthful. 46 minutes. It's a pretty good Depot Biz Chats. John, before we sign off and stuff, I want to thank you again. This was, as usual, our conversations are always a lot of fun, and I always learn something new. So thank you so much for taking the time to come out. I also want to thank some of the, I'm not going to turn the camera, but we do have some people in store. We do have room for people to come to our Depot Biz Chats while we are primarily doing this live on Facebook. We love people coming in. We have a Starbucks kiosk right there in store. And also, if you need to print some stuff, we have a DIY center. And it's called Office Depot, so there's a lot of office stuff too. So check that out. Come down to Office Depot in downtown Austin at the flagship. Work here, say hi to me, buy me a coffee, please. And
I want to personally thank you, because
sure.
this has been a blast, and thanks to Office Depot and allowing me to have this audience like that. All of our conversations have been great. So if you guys need to get a hold of me,
that's right
there.
And let me read it out just in case you don't have your glasses on like John. John at John, JOHNMANES.com. Phone, PinnacleStorageProperties.com, all one word. And if you want to give
Crank
out your
calls
number.
are welcome.
Okay, I'm always worried to put out numbers.
That's
out
okay,
there,
I don't care.
Okay.
I will screen your call, I promise.
All right, well, thank you, John. I'm sure we'll have you back. If you guys have any further questions about investments, if we piqued an interest, please join our Workonomy group on Facebook or LinkedIn. I will make sure that John gets that question, and then we'll get an answer to you. That's how we roll. So thanks again, John. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Have a great day, and we'll see you guys
See
soon.
you, everybody.